Oh, maybe it's just me. Okay, my bad. Okay, I hear you now.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, I'll stop sharing my video and you can share your screen and.
Okay, yeah, perfect.
Awesome.
Okay, hi all, I'm Ishwar, and today we are going to discuss about Google BigQuery with MuleSoft. Is everyone able to see my screen? Yep, perfect. Thank you so much for clarifying. Okay, so as Mana is already covered out myself, and apart from that, I love to watch animated movies when I get free time. Okay, let me quickly go to today's agenda. So here we'll be discussing about introduction about the topic and features and some quick points on BigQuery. And then later we'll be playing with the BigQuery in GCP. Here, GCP is nothing but Google Cloud Platform. And then we'll be seeing the BigQuery API. And then we'll be playing with the BigQuery in our Anypoint studio. So here we'll be utilizing the newly released connector and quick summary and the question answers. So okay, before starting our topic today, the major prerequisite here is like we need to have at least a sandbox account or the Google Cloud account. I think in recent time, Google has released one new feature. We can simply register for the sandbox account and we can make use of this feature to play with the BigQuery. Okay, and coming to the terminology here in this presentation or session, we'll be mainly focusing on these terminology like GCP and the BigQuery and the table and the dataset. Okay, so before going with the BigQuery, does anyone have any idea on BigQuery as ever used in your any project or any integration? If yes, you can post it in the chat box. I know there is no option to interact one-to-one, so I'm just expecting some responses in the chat box. Oh yeah, great. Okay. Yes, earlier we were using these options where MuleSoft didn't release the connector. So we were going with their REST APIs and we are trying to utilize their standard libraries in which we'll be use those libraries to connect with BigQuery. Okay, so BigQuery is like, it's a fully managed data warehouse. So the design itself, it helps us to ingest, store, and analyze the data. And with ease, we don't need to worry about anything else here. And the major feature here is like we can enable this by doing some real-time scenarios or the batch scenarios. It supports both features. Okay, the major point here is like it's like SQL based queries only. We don't need to learn any new query language here. We can simply utilize the standard SQL queries here. Okay, and the data set, coming to the data set, this is the top level containers of the organization. Like just take an example, ideally we'll be having the different projects, right? So for each project, the data set is the unique ID for that. Okay, and the table will be coming under the data set. So for each project, the data set ID should be unique. Okay, and the table, as we already know that, everybody knows it, right? So ideally, the table is nothing but where the data is stored in it. Okay, so coming to the background of this BigQuery. So this BigQuery, it was first launched in service in 2010 with the general availability in 2011. The BigQuery, it is built on top of Dremel technology. So it is a Google's powerful ad hoc query system for analyzing the read-only nested data. Okay, and this BigQuery, it is best suited for the optimizing the query performance and high cost effectiveness. Okay, so in terms of simple things, like we can mention that this is purely for the majorly it is for to make some get calls, like when we want to fetch the data from the table. So the BigQuery, it ideally the data warehouse, right? So but coming to this cloud-based BigQuery, here it will be useful when we go with OLAP types. Okay, so yeah, the major two factors here we need to consider when we need to point or when we need to consider the BigQuery. The first one is like columnar storage. So ideally, if you take any example of the database, the data is stored in tables and it will be mostly on record oriented. But when you come to the BigQuery, so here the data is stored in column wise. So if you see here in the slides, here each record will split it into the respective columns, and that those data will be stored in this way. Like here you can see this. So the R1, the R1 is sitting under C and the R1 is sitting under D. So you can correlate with the respective color, right? So the major benefit of this this columnar storage is like the data is we can compress the data when we compare with the row oriented structure. Just take an example. We can compress the data when we go with row oriented, the record oriented, with 1:3, but when we compared with the column, it is nearly 1:10. Okay, I will give a simple example here. Ideally, when we do any queries like the select queries, we'll be going with select star from the table, right? So what happens when you go with the BigQuery? So as we mentioned, it is a columnar storage. So the data will be fetched from the different respective columns. So just take an example. There is a table in which it has 3 columns: name, ID, age. When you do select star from this table, the BigQuery will give you the complete result or the amount of data present in the respective table. But when you do column wise, like I just want to fetch select ID from the table, then the BigQuery will give you the respective amount of data. So ideally what happens here when we talk about the BigQuery, so here they will be charging us based on the queries, the number of queries we are doing, and the amount of data we are fetching from the query, like from the table when we query the data. So this is a major added advantage when we go with the columnar storage. Okay, and coming to the another major factor is like tree architecture. So when Google start utilizing the Dremel technology, they were facing some challenge to make this it in a parallel mechanism. As we know that the parallel mechanism and the asynchronous manner, it's very powerful in our integration technology. So they are trying to put this architecture in a parallelism. So if you see this diagram, so what happens when the request comes to the root server, that root server will split the request, like it will push the request to intermediate or the leaf servers to process the query in parallel. So what happens by doing this mechanism, the response of the query will be less. Ideally, the performance will be more. So this is the major advantage when we tried with this architecture or tree architecture. Okay. Yeah. So the major points we need to consider when we go with the BigQuery. So ideally, it's a cost-effective cloud data warehouse. Okay, and we can transform our business with ease because we don't need to consider about any infrastructure setup here. So everything is on cloud, and that to Google will be handling that. Will be taking care of that infrastructure setup and everything. Okay, and it doesn't require any database administrator as well. So we can simply run our standard SQL queries to fetch the data at very ease of the performance. Okay, so yeah, coming to this data encryption part. So Google provides us in 2 scenarios. One is like the data is defaultly encrypted by default keys. If we don't want to go with the default keys, we can provide us the custom managed keys to encrypt the data. Okay, so yeah, okay, let me continue with this. Yeah, so here are the few of the features that we get when we go with the BigQuery. It's a serverless. Yes, it's a serverless because it's sit on the cloud, that on the Google's cloud. Okay, and it is good for real-time analytics because we can configure or we can move this BigQuery to the relevant analytic tool. So Google is having some other tools in which we can easily integrate this data to analyze our data. Okay, and the next one is high availability. Yes, it provides geographically the Google BigQuery. The Google itself provides us the different zones, so we can select the nearest one and we can do that. Yes, standard SQL. Yes, it supports the standard SQL. Okay, and the storage and compute separation. Yeah, with this option, we can store the data. So we can make use of cloud data, cloud storage, or the storage table. It is another product of the Google, or we can simply upload our relevant data to the BigQuery. Okay, and the automatic backup and the easy restore. Yeah, every product will come with this. So they will be providing us the default uh, backup and restore services. Yes, and the next one is DTS. This data transfer service will be uses when you want to migrate from or when you want to connect external applications. Like take an example of any SaaS application. So when you want to move the data from SaaS to here, we'll be going with this DTS. Okay. Like that, these are the few major features that Google BigQuery provides us. Okay, and apart from that, yeah. So you can take about example of this public data sets. When you want to explore the BigQuery, we can make use of this publicly available data sets in which it is a free of cost. We can make use out of. And if you want to use any commercial, yes, we can go with that. But as it is a commercial data sets, we need to pay something to them. Okay, and yeah, when I compare with the current market, so we already know about this legacy business warehouse tool like SAP BigQuery, right? So when we compare with this tool, yes, coming to the market share, this is not up to the mark, but it will do because this is the first one which sits on cloud. Like indirectly, it's a cloud data warehouse, right? So, but when we compare with the SAP BW, it's on premise. It will be on at the client side and it will be maintained by the customer itself. Okay. So this is about quick points on BigQuery. Okay, so before okay, yeah, Manan, shall I take your questions on these topics before going to that further, so that everyone will be on the same stand?
Yeah, I guess the only question that has been asked so far is it a kind of NoSQL database?
No, it's not a NoSQL database. It supports the standard SQL queries as well. But ideally, this BigQuery used for OLAP, like analytical purpose. We'll be having OLAP and OLTP, right? So, but BigQuery will comes under OLAP part.
Sweet. Yeah, that's all the question so far.
Oh, okay, yeah. So if you don't, yeah, can you please choose? Yes, there is an option. We can choose the region, but it will be, we can maintain this like when we start creating the data sets or when we start creating the projects, there is an option we can select the relevant zones, like the region. Ideally, we'll be going with the nearby region, right? So yeah, there is an option for that. Yes, we can encrypt the data, but you are talking about REST API. So ideally, what happens when we create the data set, they will be having this encryption part. Like we'll be going with the default encryption, or we can provide our customized encryption key. That I will be showing in the demo as well. Vito. Yeah, thank you.
Sweet.
Okay, so if we don't have any questions, let me go to the further. So this is about the BigQuery and like we have covered the features and why we go with the BigQuery and what are the major benefits if we go with the BigQuery. Okay, but if we go to the next slide, so here this is about to play with BigQuery in GCP. So let me go to this. Yeah. So, okay, let me go with the start. So ideally, if you don't have any accounts, we can simply create it. Just register here. Register with your Gmail account. So they will be providing for a 60 days trial account. But there is a limitation to use the BigQuery, like there is a limitation on the queries. So once you go to this GCP platform, just search for BigQuery. Okay, just go to the BigQuery here. Okay. Oh, this is the BigQuery UI. So here we can write our queries and we can do this query operations and everything here. Okay. So yeah, as we discussing, right? We were discussing about the data set and the table. So ideally, those two will be coming under the project. So we'll be having multiple projects. So for the demo purpose, I'll be going with publicly available project. So if you see this publicly available project, here we'll be having multiple data sets. So this is my project. Okay, under the project, we'll be having the data sets. Okay, so here in this project, we'll be having multiple data sets. But when you see this each data set, so this data set is unique in each project. So ideally, it should have the unique key. Okay, and inside this data set, we'll be having multiple tables. Okay, it's a simple tables like when we compare with the normal database. Okay, so the major limitation or major consideration we need to take care at this step is like ideally when we see this query table, we will be going with this option, right? Like we can simply click on the query table and we'll be doing the select start. But there is an issue here when we do like this. I'm just trying to mention select start. Here you can see this when the BigQuery engine itself, it will give us the amount of the data here. So this query will return 212 MB of data. Okay. So here indirectly what we are doing, we are trying to scan the table. Okay, but the BigQuery will charge us when we try to do in this type of operations as well. So the suitable operation is like when we want to export the BigQuery, I'm saying, just when you select the table, just go with the preview, or you can see the details of it. Like the details is nothing but the schema, right? So just go with the preview and select the relevant columns here. Like currently I will be going with the status field. Here you can see this. When I go with the status alone, the amount of data we fetched or we scanned from the table is 6.2 MB. Now the BigQuery will charge us based on the amount of data. Okay, this is one of the limitation or we need to take care at this point. So ideally we shouldn't go by default with the select start here. So if you see here, this table doesn't have much data. So ideally it is giving some 600 or 200 MB, right? So when we go with this type of queries, here I'm just trying to fix the count of it. So this is giving me the 2.1 GB of it. So what happens when I try to scan or when I try to scan the table or when I try to run this query, obviously the BigQuery will charge me based on the amount of data. Okay. So this is how we can explore the public data sets. So if you want to get the new things, you can go with the add data and click on explore public data sets and select the relevant public data set. So there are a lot of data sets here. You can simply select the data set and we can import that into our UI part and we can explore that. Okay. This is how we can utilize the BigQuery UI. So, okay. So now we'll be going with our custom part. So this is my project. Okay. And I want to create a data set under this project. I'm just going with this default one. So I just given the dataset ID as meetup, and here there is an option to encrypt the data, whether we need to go with the custom managed keys or we can utilize the default Google managed key. If you want to go with the custom, we just need to upload the relevant keys here. For the time being, I'm just going with the default managed key. Okay. So yeah, this is my data set. So now we are going to create a table under the dataset. So we can create multiple tables in single dataset. Okay. So I'm just going with this create table. So if you see here, there is a lot of options. We can make use of it. We can simply upload our schemas or the sample files by using this upload option. And another one is like we can make use of this cloud storage, which is another good product. We can make use of it, but when we go with this type of cloud storage, we need to pay for this as well, the cloud storage option. Okay. Similarly, we can make use of Drive and the Bigtable. So for time being, I'm just going with the upload option. Okay. And if you see the file formats, there is a limitation on the file formats. Here, currently, they are supporting CSV and JSON-L and Eswara. Okay. So we need to take care of this file formats. Okay. I'm just going with the CSV format here. Okay. This is a sample CSV file. I'm just trying to upload this file to my table. Okay. So we need to mention the table name. Okay, and coming to the schema part, we can take care of, we can give this auto detect. Anyway, I'm just uploading the CSV, right? CSV will be having the header section. So when we go with this auto detect, so it will take care of that column names and everything. If not, we can go with this edit as text. So here we need to mention the type of it, like what is the column name and the type of, like it's a normal data type. So okay, we can go with this auto detect. And coming to this part, this is about partitioning and cluster settings. So they are providing this option as well. Okay, but we are going with the no partition. And coming to this advanced sections. Okay, so if we don't want to, it's like ideally we want to maintain the header section or not. So that's it. So I'm just going with the default options here. I'm just giving, trying to create the table with this sample data. Okay, so my table I got created. When we go with this table, so here we can see this, the field names and the type of it. Okay, and this is the details of my table. When I go with this preview option, so this is the data. So when you go with this preview option, the BigQuery doesn't charge you here. Okay, and there is one more, like when we try to export or import the data, even in that scenario as well, the BigQuery doesn't charge us. The only scenario we need to take care of is like when we try to query or when we try to scan the table and when we try to store the data, like by using cloud table or Bigtable. Okay, in that case, the BigQuery will be charging us. Okay, so yeah, we can do simply perform the query by clicking this query table. Yeah, so we can go with this company. So here it will be returning us amount of data. So this is nothing but the compiler, like this will validate the query. If suppose, and if I just go with this, it's a syntax error, right? So same thing will come to here in the validator section. Yeah, this is how we do queries and how we can create the data sets and the table by using BigQuery UI. Okay, and before going to the next steps, so when I try executing this query, here you can see the response, right? So there is an option we can explore this data studio. Like when you go with this data studio, ideally it is a tool to explore or analyze our data. Okay, so but here you can see the major part I just want to cover here is you can see here the execution details, right? So when I try executing this query got processed one stage here, like as it is a 100 kbm amount of data. So that is why the query executed in one stage. But when I executing the query which has lots of data, like take an example of 2 GB, then the number of stages will be increased, like it will be more. That is why Google, the Dremel technology uses this tree architecture to push the query to intermediate or the leaf servers to make it parallel or to make the query asynchronous. it's like indirectly, it's like it is giving the query response in quick, like the performance is good, right? So this is one of the feature. Okay, so this is all about the BigQuery UI. So this is how we can create the data set and we can load the data to relevant table. Okay, before going to the next.
Just a
Yes.
quick Eswara, so Santosh noticed that just the way you switch between screens, it doesn't on their end it doesn't refresh as quick as possible, I guess, depending on what bandwidth everybody is. So what the ask is, as you switch between screens, if you can do it a bit slower, or maybe perhaps slow down a bit the pace of while you're explaining, right? If that makes sense.
Yep, sure, Mana. Thank you, Sundar, for raising it. Yep, I will do that.
Yeah, so far there are two questions that's been asked. Maybe you want to go through this now?
Yes, sure.
So the first is, does Google charge for sandbox environment as well?
No, Google doesn't charge you for this sandbox environment, and default you can make use this Google BigQuery with limited amount of features when you go with the sandbox environment. But there is an option you can register for developer account, right? So we can simply provide our credit card details, so that we will be getting some 23,000 credits. So in which it is valid up to 1 year. So after 1 year or during this period of 1 year, you can desubscribe or you can remove your credit card details and everything. So these are we can make use of their product. It doesn't charge for sandbox environment.
Okay, and as you can see, Kathy also asked, is like, how about I guess that's authentication with BigQuery and MuleSoft. I guess probably you get to that path after, or
Yes.
Yeah.
Kathy, I will be covering this in further slides. I got your question. So we here will be using the BigQuery REST API. So ideally, we'll be going with the OAuth authentication here. I'll be showing in the further slides how we can configure and how we can fetch the data using this authentication method.
Yeah, so Mary also had a question about the webhook that from BigQuery's end to publish some information or data to a queue.
Yes, we don't do data. Yes, there is a feature like we can make use of this public. You are talking about queues, right? So we can make use of that queue mechanism as well. But when you talk about the webhook capability, I don't think so. They are having webhook capability. So we need to consume their service. Like they will be exposing their service. We just need to consume that. So they won't consume our service. I got your point, Mary. Yes, ideally, every publish is nothing but when we try to push the data to the respective table, right? So we are trying to store our data in BigQuery setup or environment, their infrastructures. So yes, they are charging for it.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, here I have mentioned the same thing in the slides for reference here. So this is how we can create the table and the data sets. Okay, and here we'll be having multiple options. We can go with the default options like the upload. We can simply upload our files, or we can make use of Google Cloud Storage or the big tables. Okay, so yeah. Coming to the schema part, we can, it all depends on the file that we are going to update. So when we try with the CSV, there is an option we can go with the auto detect. So we don't need to go with the text and we don't need to mention our schema. Okay, and yes, so this is how we can do some queries using the BigQuery UI, which is in GCP. Okay, so now we have some understanding of this BigQuery and how we can query them and how we can create a table inside a data sets, right? So yeah, now we'll be going with the REST APIs. So coming to the BigQuery REST API, this is the default base URI. Okay, and currently I have exposed these options. When we talk about the data set, we are having, it's like the CRUD operations only, right? So simply if you want to get the data set metadata, we'll be going with the get operation. And if you want to create any new data set, so we'll be going with the post. And if you want to delete any data sets, so we'll be going with the delete by giving the relevant data set ID. So this is it's like the sum of the CRUD operations when we want to do some operations for this data set. Ideally, we'll be going with this methods. So if you see this URI here, so I just mentioned the base URI part here, like it's in separate. When you see this URI part, here are the BigQuery and the version, the projects. It will be the common for all projects. But the project ID is like when you see, I'll be showing in the next demo as well. So we'll be having unique project ID, right? So we need to mention that unique project ID here. And when we want to delete the particular dataset, we have to mention the dataset ID as well. Okay, so this is how we deal with the data sets. And similar, we'll be having different operations for table as well. So the same CRUD operations applicable here as well. Like if you want to delete any table from the data set, then we need to mention the dataset ID and the table ID. And if you want to get the metadata of the table, then we have to mention the dataset ID and the table. Okay, and here we can list out the list of tables present in the dataset as well. So this is some of the URI here. So I think it's pretty much similar to dataset. So we just need to mention the project ID and the dataset ID and respect to table ID as well. But when we talk about this table data, it's indirectly push and pull operations, I can say. When you want to insert any data to the table, we'll be going with this post operation. And when you want to get the data from the table, like when you want to try scanning or try selecting the data from the table, we'll be going with this get operations. Okay. So when you try inserting the data to table, we have to mention the table ID with insert all resource. Okay, and similar to this with data option, we can simply fetch the data from the table. Okay, so okay, let me go with the studio part now. So far we are clear, right? So yeah, so in the first case, I'm just utilizing the REST APIs. Okay, so let me go with this. Here I'll be going with fetch data from the respective table. Okay, in default, I'm just going with this path. Like, let me. So if you see here, the navigation API demo is my project ID. And the demo data set 1 is my data set ID. And the demo table is my table name. And we are going with the data operation. Like I'm just trying to fetch the data from the respective table. Okay. So yeah, this is how we can configure this Google REST API using our HTTP requester. Okay. So before going to that, let me show you this configuration as well. Yeah. So when you go to this hamburger menu, we'll be having APIs and services. Okay, just go to this APIs and services and go to this credential part. Okay, here we can see the list of credentials that are related to my account. Okay, just go with the create credentials. Here we just try to utilize the REST API, right? So I'm just going to create this OAuth client here. I'm going with the web application, and we can simply mention the name of it. Okay, and we need to add the redirect URI here, and just click on create. Okay, so if you see here, I just created here for demo purpose. Okay, so I just mentioned my URI as this localhost callback. Anyway, I'm just trying to hit this REST API from my studio. Okay, so we just need to take care of this client ID and the client secret. Okay, and this BigQuery, the name of this application will be scope. We have to mention this BigQuery in our scope configuration. Okay, so if you see this configuration here, I'm just mentioning my base URI here with the HTTPS port. Okay, so I just mentioned the callback URL here and local authorization URI. Okay, and these are the default configuration like authorization URL. So we need to mention this authorization URL here. Okay, and then we have to we have to mention our client credentials here in the ID and secret. And if you see this, the application name that I was mentioning, this is my scope here. So this is how we can configure the BigQuery REST API in our studio using HTTP requester. Okay, so these are the default options. So we don't need to worry about these things. Like the only part is like the token part. Okay. So, and I have mentioned all these parts in slides as well. Okay. This is how we can configure BigQuery REST API. Okay, so yeah. I'm just trying to deploy this application. So in the meantime, I'll be going with the slides. Okay. The same thing I have pasted in my slides. Okay. So these are the default configuration, the configuration we need to take care of it. We have to set up the callback URL in GCP. And the next one, we have to mention this local authentication URL, authorization URL and authorization URL, and the scopes of it, the relevant credentials. So yeah, the same thing, I just pasted those snaps here. Okay, so let me see my application got deployed. Okay, yeah. So I'm just going with this data operation. I'm just trying to fetch the data from this table. Okay, so before going that, let me check this whether I'm happy. Yeah, this is my table name, demo table 1. I have configured the same here, the demo data set 1 and the demo table 1. Okay, I'm just configuring this table in Studio. Okay, so let me hit this API. Okay, so here we were using this auth to authorization, right? So we have to get the token first, but due to some limitation in my Postman, so I'm unable to fetch the token. So for that, I'm just utilizing this Chrome browser. I'm just calling this authorization URI. So when I go with this URL, it is asking me the respect to Google accounts. I'm just going with the default account. Okay. So here is my key. I'm just taking the code value here and getting it in my auth to authorization part. Okay, this is my token with the prefix bearer. So now we have authorized our application. We are going to hit this. Yeah, we got the request here. It's a simple application only. I didn't configure anything much here. I am just trying to explain you how we can configure the Google BigQuery REST API here. if you see here, this is my path. So I'm just trying to fetch the data from this respective URI, like the demo data set one and demo table one. Okay. So I'm just trying to fetch the data. Once we're done, I'm just trying to convert in JSON format so that we can easily see this. So this is the content of the table. So I didn't maintain any schema here. I'm just trying to put everything like I just uploaded it to the respective table, right? So we can enrich the data as per our requirement. So this is how we can fetch the data from Google BigQuery using BigQuery REST API. Okay, so let me back to this. Yeah. I have fetched the same things here. Like I was using the Chrome browser to fetch the token. Once we got the token, we are simply updating it in the Postman and try hitting the application. Okay. So this is how we can utilize the Google BigQuery REST APIs. Okay. So before going to the next, yeah. Okay.
So I think the question, there's been a couple questions actually. So one of the earlier ones was you mentioned earlier about the schema and what format of schema is that, and is that can it be downloaded?
Yes. It all depends on the schema that we are going to upload. So during creation of my table, I was using the CSV format. Or if you're trying to utilize the JSON format, you'll be getting the output in the JSON as well. Like we can enrich the data as per our requirement using the data view, right? So we don't need to consider the schema, whether it will be the JSON or CSV.
Okay. And is there a public endpoint to view the resource methods for BigQuery API, so someone can do mock testing?
Yes. Once you get registered with your Gmail account, so ideally the Google is having on one external API notebook. So there you just need to configure the dataset ID and the table ID with the relevant operations so that you can simply expose the data uh, from the public datasets. You can make use of that tool if you want to explore the BigQuery API and the data sits in the BigQuery.
Okay. I think there's been a couple of questions about that callback URL.
Oh, callback. Okay.
Is that callback, like, where is that callback URL specified? I mean,
Yes.
like, I specified on GCP, but so is there anywhere it's getting configured in Mule and on the Mule side?
Yes. We have configured that callback URL here. And if you see my requested configuration, I have mentioned the same callback URL in this external callback URL. So I was anyway, I'm just using my studio to explore, right? So that is, I'm just going with this default local host. This is how we can configure the callback URL.
I think so the questions so far.
Okay.
Srinivasa, I can see the screen from here. Is anyone having a problem as well with not seeing the screen?
Yes, currently I'm at the browser, the Chrome browser.
Yeah, I can see your screen from here. Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, looks good. Yeah, so yeah, you can proceed.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so this is how we can explore the BigQuery REST API. Okay, and coming to the last part. So here we are trying to play with the BigQuery in our Anypoint Studio using BigQuery Connector. So recently, MuleSoft released BigQuery Connector in Anypoint Exchange, but it is developed by the connectivity partners like the third-party connectors. So, but if you want to utilize this connector, we have to pay some amount for the subscription or the licensing part. So for the demo purpose, we can make use this connector in our studio. But when you try deploying the same jar or the same application to any customer hosted platforms or the runtimes or the cloud hub, so there it will be, you will be getting some issue after 30 or 20 days. So there is a limitation on that. So as long as you are using this connector in your studio, you don't need to take care of any subscription part or the licensing part. Okay. Yeah. When we talk about this connector, it provides you the similar operations when we compare with the BigQuery REST API. So, but apart from that, there is another operations like the create jobs. Ideally, we'll be going with this job part when we want to process the request in asynchronous manner. So this is the only added advantage when I compare with the REST APIs. Okay. And another advantage, like it's like UI part, so you can simply drag and drop the relevant operation and make use of it. So apart from that, there is no major difference between these two things like the connector and the REST API. Okay, so in this session, we'll be seeing one end-to-end transaction like how we can create the data set and how we can create the table and how we can load the data to the respective table by using this BigQuery connector. Okay, and if you see this, these are the few operations supported by this connector, like create job and a few operations related to job and a few operations related to data set and a few operations related to the table. So when you see this type of operations, it's sort of the same methods we have seen in the REST API. Okay, and coming to this two things like the release table data and the query. So it will be the same, like when we want to fetch the data from the respective table, we'll be going with the same like query. So if you try with the jobs, then we have to mention the job ID. Okay. And the insert all. So insert all is nothing but we are trying to push the data to our respective table, right? So in that case, we have to use this insert all operation. Okay. So the BigQuery supports the streams data. So when you go with this insert all operation, the data which is flowing to the BigQuery will be streamed. Okay. So, okay. But there is a limitation on this operation as well. So we can't push more than 10,000 records at a time. So ideally, it comes under our orchestration, how we design our API to process it. So we have to take care of that. It is possible to process 10,000 records at a time here. Okay, so the same thing like here, as I mentioned in the previous slide, we'll be seeing how we can import the query to our studio and how we can configure that. Like we have to establish the connectivity, right? So instead of going to the slides, let me go to the studio first. Okay. So here we have seen this, how we can explore the BigQuery REST API. Okay. Now let me go to this connector. So if you want to download the connector, you can simply go to the exchange and look for the BigQuery. You just add it to your palette. Okay. And apart from that, we can make use of the dependency part as well. We can simply update our form.xml with the relevant dependency, and we can install the connector to our studio. Okay. So if you see this connector configuration, I'm just going with the global configuration here. The major part is like we have to mention our project ID. Like earlier I was explaining the project, right? So the project ID has to be there and the service account key. Let me show you how we can generate the service account here. Okay. So when you go to this hamburger menu, we'll be having IAM and admin. Once you go to here, just go with the service accounts. Okay, so these are all service accounts connected with my account. So I'm just going with the first one. So ideally, when you sign up for your account, you'll be having your respective email here. So if you see here, this is my project name, navigation API demo. Like I have enabled my building for this project. So that is why it is showing this. Yeah, okay. So when you go to the service accounts, just select your service account and click on create key. So we can go with the JSON or P12. I'm just going with the JSON. Okay, when I try creating this key, it will be downloading, it will be downloading it in one JSON format. So which is like in this format. Let me show you. Yeah, when you try downloading the key, it will be creating in this format. Like it will be having all the key values and the client credentials and the token URLs. Okay. So once you downloaded this, just configure your key file in this service account file. You just browse for the respective key and pick it over. Okay. So the major another advantage, like we can make sure the connectivity is working fine. So I provided my key file here with the respective project ID. So ideally, what happens? The connector is checking. It will check the possible connection. Like ideally, we'll be getting some permission issues, right? So we need to take care of that. The respective user is added to the relevant service account or not. Okay, or we can say that the respective user is having access to the BigQuery service or not. Okay. Once we have the permissions and everything, then we can simply make use of these connections. Okay, so this is how we can configure a Google BigQuery connector in our studio. Okay, so before running my application, let me show you what I'm doing here. I'm just trying to create my data set and the table dynamically. Like I'm just passing those values in using this params. So what happens once the request comes into Mule? Okay, so I'm just taking that. I'm just taking the dataset value. Here I'm just configuring the dataset ID. So ideally, the major constraint here is like the dataset name which we are providing here. It should not be present in the respective project. Ideally, the dataset is the root level, and it has to be unique for each project. Okay, that is a major consideration here. Apart from that, I haven't configured anything else, so I'm just going with the default options. Okay, so when we do this, okay, let me go with step by step. I'm just trying to create the dataset first. I got a request. So I just created the dataset here using this operation. Okay, let me go and see here whether it got created or not. So this is my project navigation API demo, and I have created this demo dataset 3. So yeah, after that I'm just trying to put some schema for my respective table. So I'm just going with some default options, like with the schema or table with the name and the age and the ID. Okay, I'm just providing I'm just passing the schema. That's it. So if you see this create table configuration, okay, I'm just putting my table ID here and I'm passing my data set, which is already present. So just now I have created data set name as dataset 3. I'm just passing the same value here. Okay. So when I click on this, so let me reload my page. Okay. Yeah, the table got created here. Okay. Or here you can see the schema is present with no data because I haven't pushed any data here. For demo purpose, I just use this for each with the limitation of 10,000 records at a time. Okay, I'm just pushing the data. The sample data, I'm just passing it over in this post body. Okay. So I'm just trying to insert the data here. Okay. So I tried to insert 10,000 records here. Check the comment. So you can see here, this is what I was saying. When you see this execution details, so for 10,000 records data, here 2 stages got processed. Due to this type of mechanism, we are getting the response in 0.6 seconds. Okay, so let me process the remaining data as well. And yeah, I just process the data. Let me query it again. So total amount of data is 32,000 records. Okay. Yeah, the same thing. Here you can see this query got processed in 2 stages. Okay, and the overall response time is like 0.8. Okay. This is how we can utilize this Google BigQuery connector in our studio. Okay, so let me go back to the slides. Yeah. So yeah, we have to take care of this project ID and the service account key. This is how we can download the service account key. Okay, so you can simply go to the service account, and here I have already created, right? So that is why I just going with the create new key. Okay, otherwise you can simply create new key from the menu itself. Okay, these are the few snapshots which I mentioned in my demo application. Okay. And coming to this operation, as I try to use this insert all operation, so as we mentioned that there is a limitation on this connector, we can't push more than 10,000 records at a time. So that we have to take care in our orchestration. Okay, so yeah. So before going to the limitations, I think we have covered all, like what is BigQuery and how we can play BigQuery in GCP, and how we can create data set, and how we can create table, and how we can push the data using BigQuery REST APIs, right? So apart from that, we have seen this BigQuery connector as well. So when we compare with this REST API and connector, if you go with the connector, we have to pay some subscription fees to the third-party vendors, third-party connector developers. Okay, so I try to connect with them, but it's around $9,000 per year. Okay, so the better solution is like it all depends on our customer whether they are okay to go with the connector or they are ready to go with the REST API. Okay, so coming to the limitations part, so BigQuery, we cannot be used this as a any relational database or any OLTP systems. Okay, and another advantage is like as it is a cloud-based solution, we don't have any opportunity or any chance to control this BigQuery because everything is set up on cloud and that is managed by Google itself. Okay, and the next one is like there is a limitation on number of updates we are doing it per table. So it is around 1500 they are allowing it. So we can't perform more than 1500. If you want to perform, then ideally they are having multiple flat rate schemes like the subscription part. Okay, but it is not recommended to update the table on every day. Okay, and this is good where the data doesn't change often. Okay, the BigQuery, it is using the default caching mechanism. Okay, so due to this mechanism, so it is better if you're going with this read-only data, I can say that. So where the data doesn't change much. Okay, these are the possible cases where we can use this BigQuery. Okay, and yeah, so as it is charging based on the amount of data we are scanning. So we need to take care of this, minimize the amount of scan data. Like ideally, we shouldn't perform the select star operation on the data tables which is having large amount of data. That we have to take care of it. Okay, and apart from that, yes, it supports both storage. Like it performs the batch operations and it performs the streaming operations as well. Okay, but when we talk about the pricing and this charge, so as we are mentioned that the Google BigQuery or the Google doesn't charge you on when you try exporting, or when you try loading the data to BigQuery, but they are charged you when you try store the data in BigQuery. Like ideally, we have seen this big table on the cloud table, right? Cloud storage, where we try to utilize their space to keep the data. So in that case, they are going to charge. Okay, and this is the URL where you can see how the respective plans and how they are going to charge. Okay, but we have to take care of these scenarios as well, like the number of users that they are going to use the BigQuery and the number of queries that per user they are doing it. Okay. So yeah, so this is all about BigQuery. So ideally, it is a fully managed by Google. We don't need to deploy any resource, or we don't need to consider about replacement of disk, or by increasing the. Ideally, we'll be going with scaling operations, right? So we don't need to take care of anything else. Everything will be taken care by Google, but we have to take care the subscription part here. Okay. So any questions?
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, we have, I think, 4 questions, that I can just read through. The first one is this synchronous or synchronous when MuleSoft executes the query from MuleSoft? Yeah. Is it asynchronous or synchronous?
Yes, it's a synchronous only. But when you see this operation, it processes the data in streams, and due to the capability of this BigQuery, we got the response in a fraction of seconds. Yes, it's a synchronous operation only.
So that's async. You mean async or sync?
Sync.
Okay, sync. Okay, synchronous. Then how about the idea of the callback URL? So what is that about? Like, isn't that so when you execute the query from the app and MuleSoft, it kicks it off, then what's the use of that callback query from that you specify in Google?
Okay. So what we're doing is like we are just authenticating our application or our request
Oh,
with Google.
okay.
We are trying to fetch the token, right? Authorization code that I just copied from our browser.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
there has to be some communication between my application and the Google server.
Gotcha. The second question is there, so you mentioned earlier about limit on the number of records. Does that also include a limit on the size of data that's being sent?
No, but ideally, when you talk about integration perspective, we don't have much amount of data, right? Like we never seen a single record is consists in GBs of data. If that is the case, then we need to take care of the size.
Okay. The other question is, can you generate a service account key per environment?
Okay.
For
I
different
can do that.
environments?
Okay. So I'm just trying to go with this options like
Okay.
in going with the service accounts. Okay. I'm just going to this hamburger menu and I'm selecting I am under admin, and I'm going to this service accounts. Here there is an option to create a key. Okay, here I'm just going with the JSON type. Okay, when I click on create, so key got created. Let's see this. Okay. So this is my new key, right? So if at all I want to use my Google BigQuery connector, I have to update the configuration again because just now I have updated my key. So in that case, I have to replace this existing key with latest key. Okay, and this is how we can generate keys for service accounts.
Okay. Yeah. I believe the final question here is it something about the service account? Is it possible to pass the service account key from the pipeline? What pipeline would that be?
That we can take care in our integration. Like here you can see this. There is an option to pass the value in expression mode, right? So just take an example. You are maintaining your keys in S3 bucket or some other location, right? So in your integration, try to fetch the data, okay, and put it in your variable or some location and pass that value here by using this expression mode. So there is an option here. We can make use of this expression, the function inside.
Cool. That's all the questions that was asked so far. Yeah, I think it's worth thinking about. It makes you, I think, the use of BigQuery from Anypoint MuleSoft perspective, like it makes you think about how how you construct your query due to all the other limitations like number of records and all that. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Thank you all. If we don't have any questions, and so these are the few reference and documentations. And thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for attending today.
Awesome.
Over to you, Mana.
Awesome. Thank you. Eswara. That was a good presentation. I hope you all enjoyed that presentation. It was quite informative, as people have mentioned on the chat, as well as, it's demo is always fun. It keeps you into it and, trying to see and understand what's going on. So thank you for going through that and sharing your knowledge with us, Eswara. We appreciate that. And for everyone, feel free to give kudos to Eswara on LinkedIn or whatever professional network if you really enjoyed the presentation. And we'll be running through the trivia, so sit tight. We'll be running through the trivia. We have a couple of questions based off from the topic of discussion, and the idea is that three participants are going to be taking, three participants are going to have the opportunity to get some MuleSoft certification vouchers and whatnot. So, all right, so I will be sharing my screen in a second. Let's get that going. Where is it? Okay. So share. Let me just share my screen real quick. Share screen. Please let me know if you can see my screen. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. So the game, if you can first of all go to kahoot.it, and then under kahoot.it, you enter the game pin with a cool nickname if you want. And we'll just wait for a couple of people to join in before we get the party started. Okay. Oh, sorry about that, Muhammad. Okay, I see we have 15 people so far. Okay, let me know. I mean, I wish we could do something. Yeah, okay, there you go. You can download the app as well and use your phone. Do you want to try that? Just wait a few seconds and we'll be kicking this up. There we go. Just put this here. All right. Let me know if you're having troubles joining. There we go. We're 16. $18. Going once. Countdown. 3, 2, 1. Everybody's good. All right. All right. I'm about to start. Oh, where's that music? Let me get the music. The fun part is. There we go. Okay. Okay. About to start. Boom. How's the data stored in BigQuery? Okay. There we go. Columnar rented. Next. Okay, we have a top 5 there. Siva is leading. Next question. Call this fastest fingers. Oh, look at that. Same stats. 13 people got that right. Let's see who's top. Santosh is catching up. Next. Ooh, double point.
Double bonanza here.
I like it. Select all possible features by BigQuery. All right. Oof. There we go. Look at that. Interesting.
They might be lacking.
Yeah, flexible pricing models, real-time analytics, as well as automatic backup and easy restore. Lack of standard SQL isn't part of it. C. Oh. Okay, look at that. And I believe this is the fourth question. We have one more question after this. Double point again. What are all formats support for loading data? I'll choose PDF for this one for sure. Boom. So the only format for supporting loading of data is CSV and Avero.
Correct.
PDF or XML isn't part of it. All right. Cool. Let's see who's topping the board. Oh, hey, there's his guns blazing here. Okay. Final question. Here we go. What is the maximum amount of raw data we can send using BigQuery in set all operation at a time? Boom. 10,000 records. And who's topping the list? Drum rolls. Ashok. Ladies and gentlemen, Ada. All right. Good job. And we had Surya and Hiral running up. Well, good job, guys. Congratulations, Haida. Congratulations, Ashok. And congratulations, Santosh. So, yeah, feel free to put your email address, Ashok, Haida, and Santosh. If you want to put your email address in the chat, as I can grab a hold of that, and you'll get an email afterwards to follow up. Okay. All right. Congratulations. This is good stuff. Then, okay, what do we have next here? That's that. All right, we have come to the end of the presentation of this event, and I'm so glad you all were able to join us from all around the world. And congratulations to those who won the trivia. And yeah, so you can please feel free to if you have a topic for suggestion, or perhaps if you're interested in giving a topic as well. If you're interested in giving a topic, please feel free to reach out. I'm just going to put my email address here at gmail.com. If you had an interesting use case that you encountered in your company that you think will be worth sharing, or you think would all benefit from, as Eswara has done, please feel free to send me an email and I'll follow up with you on that. So having said that, again, a big thank you to our speaker, Eswara. Please feel free to again give him some kudos. I really enjoyed it, and I got introduced into BigQuery, so this is really neat. Thank you, Eswara, and thank you all for joining. Any final questions? If you have any final questions, feel free to put it in the chat. Besides that, we have come to the end. Congratulations to our winner again, Ashok, Santosh, and Ada. I'll stop sharing my screen. Thank you, guys.